Hey guys, Claire here. In today's video, we're going to talk about all things Harry and Meghan. The girls are fighting, and for some weird reason, they seem insistent on bringing Harry and Meghan into the mix. Now, I know I'm not the only one who's noticed within the past 2 years. Every few months, there are stories about William's excitement to take the throne. What he will do different, what he will do better. Quite frankly, we know that William's work ethic leaves a lot to be desired. Perhaps Charles is getting a little tired of William's PR, passive-aggressive punches, because we saw that story a while back talking about Charles making sure that Harry, Meghan, and the children are center stage in his funeral plans, which seems quite silly and unlikely since Charles, right now that he is alive and able to do so, chooses not to make concessions to provide the proper security for Harry, the children, and for Meghan. So it's a bit silly to hear the stories from across the pond talking about Charles just really wanting Harry, Meghan, and the children to be a part of his funeral. Now, personally, I think that's a little jab at William because he knows that, well, we know that in a lot of the stories that William puts out, when I'm king, Harry will be exiled, the kids will have no place, I'll strip them of their titles. So maybe this is Charles's way of sticking it to William? Or maybe it's just empty words. I think it's the latter. Then we saw that photograph of Team Buckingham Palace and Team Sussex enjoying a beverage and possibly talking about reconciliation. I've never bought into that. I think that perhaps they could be talking about things for the upcoming Invictus Games, since Harry has left. Charles and William have been very petty, not even congratulating or supporting Team UK for the Invictus Games since the Sussexes had departed. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it now that the Invictus Games is literally in his backyard. So maybe it's related to that. I don't think it's about a reconciliation. And as long as Harry or Meghan says that it's one way, then I'm just not buying what the British press has to say on the matter. Harry has already told us he's open to reconciliation with his father, but apologies and acknowledgements need to be made.
As usual, the British media has this one all wrong. Harry does not want to reconcile with all of the royals. He wants to reconcile with his father. He's not going to be coming back on any type of basis, especially without his wife and his children. But it's very funny that William is rage spiraling right now about the whole thing. This article is saying that Harry can't come back because William would never allow it. Again, he does not want to come back. He doesn't want to be William's little. And I don't think that Meghan would ever step foot in a place where William was still acting like this. But one article that I do think is interesting is that the meeting between Charles and Harry might be a warning shot to William to get his act together, both to do more work and to possibly reconcile with his brother. Now, why this father and son don't just talk to each other instead of briefing the press about each other is beyond me, but that is why this is a toxic family that Harry is not going to go back to.
2 days ago, the Daily Mail were telling us that Harry is so unhappy being the bitter prince that he's absolutely desperate to move back to the UK. But today, we're never coming back. Harry and Meghan have no plans to move back to Britain despite the secret summit. Yes, we know, Daily Mail. They are this thing called happy in America. They have their family, multiple income streams, an absolutely amazing level of success. The Invictus Games, prolific investments in new tech startup companies, mainly led by females, and of course, the California weather and their Netflix deal. Why on earth would they want to come back to that family in the UK, the family who were determined not to get them to leave, but to absolutely destroy them? The British, non-working, taxpayer-funded royal family wanted to destroy Harry and Meghan because they were more successful and more liked than the non-working, British, taxpayer-funded royal family. It's that simple.
Now, we also saw that story entitled Desperate Royals Try to Censor Leaked King's Funeral Plans. And it's interesting because that included screenshots of WhatsApp messages. And it really just highlights once again that everything that Harry and Meghan has said throughout the years always comes to fruition. Now, of course, the press usually downplays it, but in this instance, we saw those screenshots and how forceful and demanding Team Buckingham Palace is towards the press, making sure that certain things are removed. And Harry has told us this. There are no unnamed sources. It comes from a source, from the palace. And what was the name of that journalist that wrote that piece, Kate the Great, for Tatler? Was it Anna Pasternak? I can't remember. I'll try to insert it when I'm editing the video. But she already told us, there's a great amount of power that the palace has over what the press puts out than the average person would assume. And what makes it even more insidious is that proves that Charles and William and their teams are responsible for making sure that a lot of those not so great stories about Charles and William and Kate and Camilla are downplayed while Harry and Meghan were sacrificed.
Remember when Meghan said that they're not just leaking stories, they're actively planting them? People laughed. They said she was too American, she was too dramatic, and she didn't understand how things worked over here. Well, guess what? There are so many invisible briefings that appear in royal stories, things like sources close to the palace, things like friends of, things like royal expert, things like senior aide. That's not journalism, that is PR theatre. And yesterday, the Daily Beast, who actually we know has affinity and has loyalty to a certain couple, they leaked the whole transcript of a WhatsApp conversation that senior aides to a certain palace sent out to a select and handful of journalists, proving that Meghan and Harry were right. They were telling the truth. So when Meghan said, the last time we heard from her, when she said, all I want is for them to tell the truth, this is exactly what she meant.
So since the story of this so-called reconciliation or step towards reconciliation came out, we knew that it was about time that William or Team Kensington Palace would come out with some sort of retaliatory PR tactics, and boy did they ever. Recently we saw that article talking about Charles being, well, a horrible boss. Are we surprised? No. Charles has a reputation for being quite the, I won't say bully, but there are so many instances throughout the years that we've heard from people who were former staff members of just how horrible it is to work for Charles. And we also know that they don't get paid a lot of money. So it's a lot to put up with. But somehow they told us that Meghan is the bully. And since they've made those claims, we've yet to hear exact examples of her being a bully. All they've given us so far is that she sent early morning emails. Now, there's been a story from the London Sunday Times, which I personally feel is a shot from Kensington Palace, directed towards King Charles. It's entitled, King Charles's Garden at Highgrove is a Toxic Workplace. Charles's famous garden may look nice, but it's a miserable place to work. A new investigation by the London Sunday Times has uncovered extraordinary allegations by the beleaguered royal gardening team at the King's private home, Highgrove House. The report claims that of the 12 full-time gardening staff who were employed there in 2022, 11 have since resigned and been replaced, including not one, but 2 head gardeners. The report paints a picture of a toxic workplace culture at the very heart of the King's cherished sanctuary. I have always maintained, and I feel like a vast majority of people from the Sussex squad has maintained, that whenever you see the British press and, their royal mouthpieces on social media make accusations against Harry and Meghan, it is almost always a distraction and projection.
Highgrove, is losing its harmony.
This story really, not a lot surprises me. This story really surprised me, I have to say. Highgrove is one of the King's residences. He is a passionate gardener. We know that. He's a passionate environmentalist. The King likes to take his daily walks. When he's at Highgrove, he likes to take his daily walkabout. He likes to give feedback to the staff. He likes to quiz them. In recent years, things have got very unhappy with the gardening team, the head gardening team at Highgrove. They have lost 11 out of the 12 gardeners since March 2022. That is a lot of staff. You don't turn down, you don't chuck in a job at Highgrove if you're a gardener. I don't imagine there are wonderful, lots and lots of gardening jobs going up, beautiful royal gardening kind of venues. Anyway, including head gardeners. Let me just read you what happened when he was walking. He was doing a walkabout. And he was talking to a probationary gardener, so presumably a young lad or a trainee gardener. And the gardener made a factual error about a flower. And you know what King Charles said? Don't put that man in front of me again.
Joking.
It's really bullying behaviour. It's really, and I'm not an anti-monarchist at all. But this actually is, it catalogues really unpleasant behaviour, actually, from King Charles towards his staff.
But gardeners
low pay, low morale.
Gardeners can earn a fortune these days. You can't, where I live up north, you can't get gardeners. You really can't get gardeners. And it's...
Working at Highgrove is quite different. Working for King Charles at Highgrove.
Are they paid well?
No, very low pay.
Well, precisely. So why... No, you've still got to make a living. You've still got to put food in the fridge.
Yeah, you do. And do you think that's an acceptable way for King Charles to speak to people? To a young gardener who got something about a flower wrong, don't put that man in front of me again.
If he said it,
not nice.
Acceptable.
Bullying.
If he said it, if it's wrong.
If that story had been about Meghan, he wouldn't have doubted it for a second. He would have wholeheartedly believed it and went on and on about how horrible of a person she is. The double standards.
The invisible contract that Harry talks about so much in Spare and in all of the interviews that he has given has now been put on display, which of course proves Harry correct yet again. The royals tried to censor the leaked funeral plans of the king. Remember those plans that I talked about a couple weeks ago where they wanted the Sussexes to be at the center of his funeral? I was like, why would he want them to be at the center of his funeral if he's not even with them in real life? Well, apparently, someone who works for the royals texted the royal rota and said there would be consequences to anyone who used the Telegraph's reporting, as in the consequences would be they would not receive statements and information from the royals anymore if they use the Telegraph story about the king's funeral plans. So this is that invisible contract made visible with these WhatsApp text messages. What that means is that the royal family could have stepped in to protect Meghan from the racist media at any time. They could have sent a WhatsApp message like this: if you say anything about Meghan that is racist, you will lose access to the royal family. But they obviously did not, because they were obviously the ones benefiting from the bad coverage that Meghan was receiving, and the bad coverage that Meghan still receives to this day. There is the invisible contract made visible, proving Harry's point yet again that they could have protected that family had they wanted to.
The Spectator, Alexander Larman. Alexander, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm a bit surprised by the front page of your Sunday Times today. Now, I thought, King Charles was a bit tree-huggy, but maybe Harry's got a point about the rest of the royal family on this one. I mean, Charles doesn't sound like that good a boss, does he?
Hi, Dawn. Well, I think the thing to remember is that all members of the royal family staff have always been incredibly badly paid. I mean, this isn't limited to Highgrove, Buckingham Palace, or any of the other institutions. I mean, especially people who are doing the behind-the-scenes stuff. I mean, the domestic staff, they have never been well paid. In fact, the revelation that a lot of the Highgrove gardeners are on minimum wage would be quite shocking. But on the other hand, I think there is a real disconnect between King Charles, how he sees the world and how things ought to be in his eyes. be like for these people, because ultimately it's a demanding job. I mean, there was a story a couple of years ago about how people were expected to literally crawl across the lawn at Highgrove and picking out things like woodlice because Charles didn't like the noise of people having to do it with any machines. And the trouble is, if you are king, it's very difficult to say no to him. But of course, there is this very fast staff turnover. There are all these people who obviously aren't happy. And I think you have to start saying, well, why isn't there somebody between the king and obviously the HR who can say to him, well, hang on, this isn't working. If you want the gardens to look as magnificent as they have done, first of all, you have to have really top-end staff who are going to be paid properly and who pay competitive salary. But secondly, you also have to rethink the traditional royal attitude towards staff. You have to actually take these people seriously, because it's the kind of thing that a lot of your viewers, I think, would probably have thought that's the kind of job I would have liked to have done. Then you inquire, well, what's the pay? The pay isn't always pathetic. It's a real pity.
I mean, the one paragraph in this that really shocked me, Alexander, was the King was involved in one departure after a probationary gardener made a factual error about a flower, prompting Charles to insist, don't put that man in front of me again. I mean, there's being angry with someone who's not doing their job properly, but that's just downright nasty and rude, isn't it?
I don't think it's so much downright nasty and rude as just completely removed from reality. Because what we have to remember with Charles is that there's been a lot of PR spin about him since he became king. How wonderful he is, how great he is, blah, blah, blah. This isn't really true. The thing about King Charles is that for all the wokery and for all the tree hugging, there is this part of him which is incredibly entitled. And he'd always believed that he can do whatever he likes. And when this butts up against reality, he doesn't like it. I mean, just remember after he became king, when he was using that pen to sign that piece of paper and he lost his temper. I mean, we all saw how quickly he gets moved to anger. I mean,
Yes, remember, yeah.
Now, with all the palace briefings between Team William and Kate and Team Charles and Camilla, even though so far it seems like Camilla and Kate are sort of left aside and this battle seems to be just between William and Charles, but in this article I sort of feel like it takes a shot at William, so I'm wondering if it didn't come from Charles's team. It's basically said that several sources close to Princess Anne knows that she would like to see William do more bread and butter royal engagements, aka like work, actually show up to engagements and not sporting events, maybe? Only the King, Anne, and William do investitures, many of which take place at Windsor Castle, near William's Windsor home. A source close to Anne says she's still doing most of the investitures at Windsor, even though William lives there and it annoys her. They don't call him Workshire Willie for nothing. And before I forget, because there's so much to cover with all of those articles, but the executive director of Highgrove, so Charles's main man when it comes to Highgrove, was also caught following Meghan. He's following 743 people, one of which is the Duchess. Why? Why?
I don't know where to start with this one. It's absolutely off the scale. Charles is a bully, full stop. And if you don't know about the Times and the Sunday Times, they are both one of the most respected, globally, journalistic and media outlets. They get to the bottom of the story with no faff and no fuss. And they said Meghan was a bully for sending emails early in the morning. I mean, this stuff is just off the scale. Let's unbox it. So Highgrove appears to be treated like King Charles's private property. Apparently, and we only know this due to the Times, he spends 3 days a week there. Nice for him, right? Tending his exotic plants and flowers. Nice work if you can get it. This was actually meant to be passed down to Prince William when Prince William becomes king, but Charles has done some dodgy deal in 2011, which means that if Charles is still alive when William's king, Highgrove is still his. Let's get to the bullying. He has, I've had to make notes, literally, it's that terrible. He's lost 11 from 12 staff, all employed in 2022. One of the gardeners that have left, his name is on the record, but they've anonymised it for the sake of his privacy, has told of an incident where Charles put another gardener on the spot, and when that gardener failed to answer Charles's question to his satisfaction, he said in front of the guy, "Never put this man in front of me again." There was anger bubbling under the surface. Charles continually shows no patience. He regularly made impossible requests of the gardeners, mainly about the shade of the roses. I think that's nature. The shade of the peaches. Oh my goodness. He's obviously got a massive greenhouse. And the types of potato that should be served in the restaurant. He micromanages everybody and, quote unquote, life there is not very nice. And, you know, just looking at this, it's rare for the UK media to attack Charles. Something's going on, guys. Something's going on.
I agree with Martin. The thing that's going on, well, as far as I'm concerned, is a battle of overinflated egos. You remember in the prior video, we talked about Meghan sending, or I don't think it was in my prior video, I think it was in a short that I made, sharing that Meghan had sent out a beautifully prepared wooden box of her as ever products to her girlies. And I don't know if that person who wrote the article's tea was spiked, but they wrote an article insinuating that Meghan sent a birthday box to Camilla. Why would Meghan send anything to Camilla? I don't understand. So not only were they attempting to make some sort of connection between Camilla's birthday to Meghan, because let's be honest, if it wasn't connected to Harry or Meghan's name, no one would really care outside of true fans of the royal family. Camilla's birthday, I don't know, did you guys hear any sort of coverage about it where you are? Let me know in the comments below. So not only did they try to connect that to Meghan, but they were also complaining because apparently Harry's trip to Angola eclipsed her birthday coverage. Oh no, so unfortunate. And what's funny about that is Harry's trip really isn't about Harry. It's about the landmines, but also about continuing on the legacy of Princess Diana. Now, recently on social media, we saw a letter from October of 2024 that Prince Harry wrote to the tattoo artist of the East Side Ink Tattoo in New York. Remember, for Invictus Games, they did the little skit at his tattoo shop, and Prince Harry sent him a personal letter, which is not surprising. Him and Meghan tend to do things like that because, you know, they're thoughtful that way. And this week there was also an article where Princess Delphine of Belgium defended Prince Harry. And according to Princess Delphine, everybody's bullying him. And I'm glad someone is able to call it out, or someone in her station in the royal world to call it what it is, bullying. And I do maintain that Charles's treatment of Diana and his son Harry and his grandchildren, and Meghan of course, will be a stain on his legacy. Now, before I forget, someone shared photos from Abigail Spencer. Of course, we know that's Meghan's former Suits co-star and bestie, and she was wearing Archewell merch. Seriously, Archewell, can we get some merch? Can you make it available for us? I'll even take a water flask with the Archewell logo on it, but a hat would be pretty fantastic.
Meghan Markle is the scapegoat for the royal family, as Mr. Bates is the whistleblower in the Royal Mail post office scandal, as protesters are vilified and jailed for trying to bring about positive change.
In the video I posted a few days ago, the New York Post decided to do a blind taste test of Meghan Sussex's rosé. And her rosé was pitted against other celebrity rosés. So it was a blind taste test by these sommeliers who are at the top of their game based in New York. Now, here's the funny thing. It's not the fact that hers was tested against the others, and of course it came out on top because my girl is all about excellence and she won't just put her name to something she hasn't tested over and over again. So we know she's all about excellence. That's not the problem. What I found really, really funny was that one of the sommeliers was literally heartbroken that hers came out on top. And another thing that I found very interesting was that nobody had done a blind taste test of other celebrity wines or other produce produced by members of a certain family, until Meghan decided to do her own produce. Her jam has been blind tested. Again, that came out on top. Now her rosé. It seems as if the monitoring that this woman gets is on another level, and she knows this, so she is ready. Remember the saying, for a certain set of people, you've got to be twice as good to get half as much. And all this blind testing is suddenly proving that to be right. But Meghan girl, keep standing on the necks of these people and keep making your coins. You are on your way to becoming a billionaire, because again, a blind taste test giving you fantastic and incredible PR that you haven't had to pay for. And I know that the marketing department of Netflix are so happy about this.
Oh, I hope Princess Kate isn't overdoing it, spending another day watching tennis. At least she has her supporting husband there to make sure she's okay. And what an absolute stroke of luck that she's feeling strong enough to do 2 days on the trot.
And with that, we've come to the conclusion of today's video. Wherever you guys are, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, whenever I'm studying or reading my Bible, sometimes I like to have sort of calming, encouraging music in the background. And for the past few weeks, while I was recovering from my surgery, I would listen to really encouraging and uplifting channels, sort of like affirmations. Some of them, it was just really calming music. Some would include a little bit of scripture. And I figured, why not create a space like that myself? So I made a second channel called Mindfully You, and that's basically what it's going to be about. There's going to be a little bit of affirmations. Sometimes there's going to be a little bit of encouraging scripture. Lord knows there's so much going on in the world today. So if you're looking for a little corner of the internet with some soft-spoken reminders to breathe and find a little bit of peace and calm, then perhaps this will be something to enjoy. So if that sounds like something that you may be interested in, please check it out. I'll leave the link below. Again, it's called Mindfully You. So yeah. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, hit that notification bell.